Hi, it's Rory from Counselling Tutor, and we're here in Glastonbury, the beautiful town of Glastonbury, with our good friends CPCAB, which are a UK awarding body for counselling qualifications. We're right at the heart of their operation in their studio. So exciting. And I'm joined by Kelly and Heather, who are going to answer your questions that you've put to us and we're asking on your behalf. So thank you for agreeing to this interview. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, we're really pleased to be here and to meet you formally. As you said, Kelly Budd. My role here at CPCAB is as Head of Qualifications, which in a nutshell, we'll get into it in a little bit more detail shortly, in a nutshell means that I manage our qualification service. So essentially everything that relates to our activities as an awarding organisation, from our tutor and centre support to the kind of quality assurance and development of our qualifications. And I manage most of the people that the tutors and students will have been in contact with over the years.
So you have oversight of virtually everything.
Oversight of everything that kind of comes under qualifications kind of comes under me, which is exciting.
Yes, well, thank you.
Hi, and I'm Heather Price, and I'm known as a senior counselling professional, and I've been here at CPCAB for just over 10 years and have managed mostly the higher level qualifications, levels 4, 5 and 6, and still do some of that and also manage the CPD programme. Okay,
so what would your role be? How would you input onto the qualifications? You mentioned you were the senior practitioner, if you like.
It's having an overview of each of those qualifications and answering queries from students and tutors, and managing the external assessment process for each of those levels. So making sure that questions are produced for the level 4 in a timely fashion, and that there are enough assessors on board to cope with the number of students registering at each window. And for the levels 5 and 6, again, to make sure there's enough assessors and moderators to look at the case reviews which come in that we mark here at CPCAB.
So you're really at the kind of pointy end of the work, where the work would come in,
the pointy end,
the sharp end of the work, and where it would come in, and you'd oversee. It sounds like it's a quality kind of oversight that you have.
Yes, yeah. And I also do some external verifying where I go out to visit centres to do a quality check, but we'll say more about that later on.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for such a great introduction. And as I said, you, the audience, have sent us some wonderful questions, which I'm going to put to our friends here. And the first question is, what do you mean by CPCAB, and what work do you do? That's quite a broad question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if we kind of start with the kind of surface level information, what do we mean by CPCAB? It's probably quite useful to explain what the acronym means, because it often gets muddled with other ones. So it stands for Counselling and Psychotherapy Central Awarding Body. So for us, that really sums up that for us, we act as an awarding organisation, so we award qualifications in a very specific specialist area. So for us, we focus entirely on counselling and psychotherapy as a subject area. We have kind of spread our wings a little bit into life coaching and supervision qualifications. But essentially, we are the awarding end of qualifications for counselling psychotherapy in the UK. One of many awarding bodies that do it.
Yes.
But for us, we're the specialist one.
Yes, and I guess what I've heard there is that there's a real specialist element to CPCAB. You really do, as we say in the north of England, stick with the knitting. In other words, you just do one thing, and that is you do the psychotherapy supervision qualifications. And I've heard you're going into coaching. You do coaching qualifications, and I guess for students, they know you probably best when they get their certificates in the end, and it'll be CPCAB on the top.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're aware that probably for a lot of students we are just the logo that appears on their certificate, and I think for us we're really keen for people to really understand what goes on behind the scenes of that and what it really means to have a regulated qualification awarded as a practicing counsellors, psychotherapists in the
Yes.
field. So why that's something that's important for people to have.
That quality seal, that when someone's qualified,
Yeah.
that it really means something,
Yeah,
that it's
absolutely.
meaningful. So I touched a little earlier on the fact that you stick with the knitting. So CPCAB is really different from other awarding bodies. You focus purely on counselling qualifications and nothing else.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're aware there are a lot of awarding bodies that will offer counselling qualifications, but will also do qualifications in engineering and floristry and many other different kind of specialist areas. From our kind of original inception, we have always been designed to operate as specialists in this area. So for us, it was never going to be a case of we were going to become a kind of generic awarding body that did many different subjects. For us, it's about the ethos of the organisation supporting practitioners who work in this field. So we believe that we do one particular thing and we do it well. And I guess part of our kind of history is we originally came about through our chief executive, Anthony Crouch, kind of having a kind of personal journey through counselling training himself, and eventually kind of starting off designing from scratch new qualifications in the field to kind of meet what he felt was kind of an unmet need in the field.
Yes.
And he started delivering and teaching those qualifications himself, and over time realised that there was a real thirst for it, a real kind of energy in the profession, that they really kind of wanted a decent suite, a decent progression route through kind of all stages, from kind of beginning counselling skills through to being able to be qualified. Yes. And so that's kind of where CPCAB originally came from as an awarding body, and he realised that those qualifications could be knitted together, could be offered by an awarding organisation, and could actually be connected to Ofqual, Qualification Wales and SIA, who are 3 regulators, to essentially offer a real kind of quality stamp on counselling training.
Yes, and one thing I'm picking up from that is there's a real progression route, isn't there? So someone can literally have no idea about counselling, they come into an introduction course, and if they stay through the suite, they could come out as a highly qualified, highly competent psychotherapist.
Yeah, and all the progression route, it makes sense if you knit it together. So part of my background is I used to be a counselling tutor. So when I started looking at qualifications that I was going to deliver, I remember starting off with the intro because it made sense to me. It had kind of a neat kind of, the kind of 7 processes, to me, just made sense in terms of this is what I wanted to teach my students. And then worked my way through teaching the 2, the 3, the 4. And they all fit together, so the 7 processes follow through the whole progression route. So for students that start at the beginning and work their way through, it should all make a kind of coherent process for them.
Yes, because we hear so often that students come to the end of one course and there's no progression for them, and then there's confusion and fear. And, you know, I know the Counselling Tutor postbag gets lots of letters about, well, where do I go now? I'm not sure, do I do this? But what I'm hearing is CPCAB offer a complete journey, right beginning, right up to master practitioner level, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also part of Anthony's idea was to have robust assessment in place. So the structure is supported by assessment at each level, whereas previously there often wasn't any like external assessment, there wasn't any externality to the qualifications, whereas now there are with the CPCAB qualifications.
Just explain a little bit about externality.
I'm not sure if that's a word, but I've just used it.
That makes sense.
I think each qualification, so there's some kind of benchmarking across the country. Each qualification has an external element to it. So most of the assessment is done within the centre, within the college or the private training centre. But there's always an element which is looked at by the awarding body, by CPCAB. So that might be what we call an external assessment, which is like an exam, or it might be by an external verifier looking at the portfolios, or it might be by CPCAB looking at samples of work, scrutinising samples of work. So that keeps the standard across the country.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think previously, before Anthony put this into place, there wasn't that. A lot of the courses were very kind of ad hoc, and people did their own thing in their own centres,
Yes.
whereas this has standardised it across the country. So if you're doing a level 2, you could be doing it anywhere across the country, but everybody knows what a level 2 means.
Yes. And I guess this employment level, that's really important, because when someone qualifies at practice level, they're going into employment, which means that employers have a standard.
Yeah,
They know that
they have a
being,
notion of what it is. Yeah, that's
being in
right.
Bath or Bradford,
Yeah.
Yes.
they know that the standard is exactly the same and the outcome's the same.
That's right. Yeah.
Little interesting fact when I was here yesterday, is it true that most of the people who work here are practising counsellors?
They are indeed. It's one of our kind of taglines that I think gets lost in translation somewhere.
Yeah.
It says the only counselling awarding body run by counsellors.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely true all the way through the company.
Yeah.
So I'm still working in private practice as a counsellor and supervisor. The majority of our counselling professionals here have been trained fully as counsellors. They're often people that have worked in the field in agencies in private practice, and often have also been counselling tutors themselves.
Yeah.
So I know you're still in practice.
Yeah, I still do a little bit of private practice, and I work for Cruise Bereavement Care as a volunteer bereavement support worker, and also as a supervisor, and do some training for them. So I still keep my hand in all aspects of it, which is really useful when talking to students, looking at designing courses, assessments and so on. So that is one of our features, that we're all counselling professionals in one way or another.
Yeah, that really is unique, isn't it? Because there's a sense there that every aspect of what CPCAB has done is touched by practice and the work.
Yeah.
And of course, the dedication to clients.
Yeah,
Who
and
are...
we've got that experience behind us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It even goes into kind of unusual areas, because you would often expect the counselling professionals who are working on the development of the qualification to still have relevance in the field, still be practising. But even some of our administrative staff have done our level 2 counselling skills qualification because they know that it enhances their kind of communication skills in the workplace. So it permeates the whole company, and it really brings people into the same place in terms of our philosophy and really believing in what we do.
And for me, it's kind of comforting to know that the people who make the awards have actually done them.
Yes.
I was speaking to someone yesterday, and he said, I work here, and I've actually done the award.
Yeah, I qualified as a counsellor with my CPCAB level 4 diploma, and at that point had no idea that at some point in the future I'd be working for the company. Always thought they sounded awesome. Never quite thought it would end up like this.
What are CPCAB's aims for themselves, learners, and for the profession itself, do you think?
Wow. I think our aims for ourselves as an organisation are made quite clear in our kind of philosophy, which actually is a published philosophy, in terms of really being able to enhance relationships between people, whether that's counselling practitioner relationships with client work, whether that's interpersonal relationships in the workplace, whether that's connecting really kind of closely with our centres and our tutors. For us, it's about modelling that at the heart of the organisation, so that we're able to support that rolling out into society as a whole. I guess it's one of the things I remember saying when I first started to work here, moving from counselling teaching into this, is for me it was about, in a really cheesy way, enhancing the greater good of, I wanted to be able to support CPCAB into the future to kind of create real excellence in counselling training, because for me that makes better practitioners, and better practitioners can have a really good positive impact upon the mental well-being of the clients that they encounter. So for me, it really does kind of start small in terms of how we work with each other and rolls out into that work as a whole.
So the ethos starts here, and it's just kind of transmitted through the relationships you have, the qualifications that you make, and all aspects right through, into employers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the qualifications are based on current research. Anthony is very keen on having the appropriate research to back up the qualifications that we offer, and so he's usually the one that's very busy finding out about what's going on in the wider world and bringing that back into CPCAB so that we can offer that through our qualifications. So they're always as up to date as they can be. And that's really important to spread that across the country.
I think that's a really interesting point, Heather, because, you know, qualifications themselves, they look the same year in, year out. But actually, what I've learned by being here is that CPCAB is that the qualification is alive. It's being looked at and it's being informed by research. And that I think that's quite unusual in terms of awarding bodies, because it's almost like the profession lives through the qualification.
Yeah, I think they're evolving all the time, all the qualifications. We don't just put them out there and leave them. We're always looking at them and looking at how things can be improved, brought more up to date or whatever. And hopefully that the tutors out there as well as the students, you know, learn from that and invigorate their own courses and not just do the same thing every year, year after year.
Yes, because our profession is a rapidly changing profession, isn't it?
Indeed,
There's more research now available, and, you know, I think more research than probably ever before that's informing practice. Do you have any kind of, not secrets, but things that people might not know about the CPCAB?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I guess we've got our normal kind of core qualifications. That's the progression route that most people know about. And I hope that's quite well known from kind of introduction all the way through to level 6. But there's actually quite a lot else that we do. Do you want to share a few of them?
In addition to the suite of what were called regulated qualifications, we offer tailor-made qualifications. So if a centre wants to design their own course, an example might be, say, working with children and young people, which we don't offer as a qualification, but a centre could produce the qualification with our help and then offer that themselves. So it's kind of custom made or tailor made, as we call it. So we're always open to working with anybody to produce tailor made qualifications. We run the CPD, the Continuing Professional Development Courses training, which is still just sort of taking off. That's still fairly new for us, but that's something that we realised there was demand for out there. So we've begun to address that, and that will continue. We make films.
Yes.
We do all our own DVDs for the external assessments for the lower levels. So they're all done in-house here. We support other ventures, like we've recently had a diversity symposium in London, which went very well. What else? I'm trying to think what else we do that people might not know about.
One thing that kind of struck me just being here, we've been here for, I guess, a couple of days now nearly, how eco-friendly you are.
Yes.
Very, very eco-friendly. You know, the outside of the building's got panels on for electricity, and everything seems to be very eco-friendly. Is that part of the philosophy of CPCAB?
It is. There's a real underpinning kind of social consciousness to what we do.
Yes.
In terms of our impact on other people, our impact on the environment. The building, I think, is entirely neutral in terms of its kind of eco output. We recycle. We reduce our use of paper.
We've just gone back to using milk bottles.
Yeah, actual
which are delivered.
We're very much kind of moving towards a kind of working approach where we support people to work remotely from home, so that it reduces people's travel and carbon footprint. So it is really about the bigger picture.
Yeah, and that comes across the socially responsible organisation, making qualifications, delivering qualifications for betterment in the wider world, but also living those values. In terms of how you act and how your company reacts in the world. Quality is always an issue that comes up in counselling. So, how do you ensure the quality of your qualification? One of the things that our audience often asks is, how do I know that the bit of paper I'm getting at the end of my 2 or 3 years is worth something?
I guess It essentially comes down to an understanding, like Heather was saying, about our qualifications being regulated and having a quality standard that matches a level 2, a level 3, a level 4 through counselling. But by us being a regulated awarding organisation, essentially means that we have to hold really high quality standards in order to keep that title, that stamp going. And that means not only that we map against other counselling qualifications at those levels, we map against educational standards in the UK. So our students should know that our counselling qualifications are on a par with other kind of educational standards. So a level 2 in our qualification as a certificate, level 2 qualification in engineering, that has the similar kind of educational standards.
Yes.
In order for us to achieve that, we have to have a series of structures and processes here to be a regulated awarding organisation. So things like as Heather mentioned earlier on, our external verification service. We have a large team of external verifiers who are standardised and trained by us, who visit the centres regularly, 2 times a year minimum. And they will be checking that those centres are delivering the qualification in the way that we originally approved them to run it. We have a very rigorous approval process. So when a college or a private centre approaches us and says, we would like to run one of your qualifications, they have to provide a detailed scheme of work, details of the tutors that are going to be delivering that qualification and their qualifications and their experience, details of how they would deal with complaints, how they would deal with potential malpractice. Their policies and procedures come to us as well so we can scrutinise them. They have to show us a full contingency of what would happen if all of their tutors went off sick. How would they support those students to complete? So we do a really thorough approval process, and then our verifiers go in regularly and they check in detail that process is still happening, that students are being supported appropriately, that they're getting the right number of tutorials, essentially that everything that is said on the tin is happening.
Yes.
And then they will look at the students' work as well and make sure that the evidence they're providing to those criteria is being well assessed by the tutors in that team, that the tutors are also feeling supported by management, that essentially the whole process is working for the benefit of those learners. And I guess that's kind of one kind of aspect of what we do.
And I don't know if you said the external verifiers come into head office here twice a year to have a training day. So again, they're all speaking from the same hymn sheet when they go out to the individual centres that they visit. And with external assessment, the things that are marked here at CPCAB, we have assessors' days, usually at every window, every assessment window. So the assessors and the moderators come in to us here. We mark a sample paper together. We agree on the standard. So the assessors don't just sort of go off and do their own thing. It's all moderated and standardised here before they start marking their papers.
Yeah, because I know a lot of students kind of wonder what happens when their work disappears, what the process is, and there's quite a lot of fantasies about that, from it being scrutinised by a group of detectives forensically to people just going, yeah, that looks okay.
I think probably the external assessments of the exams are one of the most kind of mysterious things.
Yes.
What does CPCAB do with those exams? How and why do we write the questions the way that we do? How do we mark them? Who marks them? Where do they go when their papers disappear at the end of their exam? And there is a real detailed process behind the scenes that makes sure that, for example, every student who passes their level 4 exam has been through a very well trained, very well standardised assessor who regularly meets with us and looks at the quality standard for a level 4 that maps against national criteria for a level 4. And if there's the possibility that that assessor thinks that candidate is not proficient, that paper will then go to a second equally trained assessor, a moderator we call it, who will mark it again blind. And if they still come out with a not proficient, then that is the result that goes to the candidate. So every paper that the candidate gets back is looked at twice at the very least, and those people that are marking it are very experienced assessors. They're people that we have confidence in, we guide them. And if we make any kind of qualification changes, that is rolled out in a very detailed process over several years to make sure that the standards don't suddenly fluctuate one year,
Yes.
that people aren't, everybody's not passing one year and then failing the next. It has to say kind of
There's
even.
an acclimatisation process. And I think it's interesting that you say that the tutors, the people who teach the students, come here a minimum of twice a year to have a standardisation meeting, and so you can transmit to them, the tutors, what's expected.
Yeah, that's slightly different. The external. No, the
The
external
assessors.
verifiers come here,
Yeah.
but also the assessors and moderators come here
Yes.
at every window for the qualification. But the tutors come to something else called standardisation training,
Yes.
which we run around the country, usually in the autumn term, and we tend to have a mop-up session, as it were, in the spring, in January, February time. So we go to places like London, Birmingham, Northern Ireland. Sometimes we go to Manchester, Bristol, usually. And so tutors come to us on those days, and we do a whole training for that day. So every tutor has to come every 2 years, and new tutors have to come on the first year that they start teaching.
Wow.
So again, that's part of our quality check,
Yeah.
that the tutors know what they're doing. And we do offer a kind of introduction to new centres if they either want to come here and we can support them through the beginning of their qualifications, or we can go into the centre or into the college and do it that way.
The whole process, as someone who's a former tutor, the whole process sounds super supportive, because you know if you're going into teach a course you've never taught it before, you've got the specifications, and to be able to come to your awarding body and say, look, I need a bit of help and guidance.
Yeah, and I guess backing that up as well, there is paperwork, although it's all mostly computer-based these days. So each qualification has got a specification, which you just mentioned, a tutor guide and a candidate guide. So those are the three kind of Bibles for each qualification. And then each qualification has got a range of support documents, which are also available on the website. So there is a lot of support there. Sometimes people have to kind of look for it, know that it is there and look for it, but it is there.
So a candidate guide would be a kind of information for the student.
Yep.
Yeah, so they know what was expected.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah, if they read that and actually take in what it says.
I'm sure they're all very diligent.
Yeah, sure they are.
Yes, but
But a lot of the answers to their frequently asked questions are actually in their candidate guide.
Yes, which brings me to the next question, really. Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes students are not happy, or they feel a bit hard done by. What is your process if a student contacts you? How does that work?
Well, it often depends on what the nature is of what might be going wrong.
Yes.
So we do have a kind of full staff contingent here to answer any queries and inquiries. So if by any chance it isn't covered in the documentation that we provide, we're very happy to guide tutors, particularly in kind of areas that they might be uncertain, or sometimes what we think is kind of a sentence in a tutor guide that says this is what should happen in this circumstance might be read in an ambivalent way there. And so we're very happy to clarify and provide guidance where we can. Same thing with students. Most often if it's we're not too sure what's going on here, or can you clarify this? It might be that we say, have you checked this out with your tutor first? Because that would be your first port of call. Because, like we say, we provide the qualifications, but actually there's a lot of variation in delivery that's entirely expected, different theoretical approaches and things like that. And if somebody were to ring up and ask us, should my tutor be teaching this bit of this theoretical approach on this particular session number, that's not the level of detail that we get into.
Yes.
But if a candidate comes to us and says, I'm having a real difficulty with my centre, or I think there might be a real kind of cause for complaint here, like I said, when we approve a centre, we check that they have a very detailed complaints procedure that they will offer to students, so that that student actually has a really fair process they can go through to raise concerns, to share their worries with their centre, with their tutor or the centre management, and that there is a staggered process that can go through to ensure that student is supported to make a complaint if there's an issue.
And we monitor that, don't we? So if a student, I mean, what tends to happen is that students contact us in the first instance because something has gone wrong, usually, not always, in the relationship with their tutor.
Yes.
And that's not our remit to kind of sort that out, so we would always refer them back to their centre
Yes.
to find informal avenues, first of all, just to talk to the tutor or whoever it may be. And if that doesn't work, to go to the next line of command, as it were, up in their centre. And if that doesn't work, then they may have to take out a formal complaint. And once they've done that and gone through the formal complaint, they can ask us to look at it to make sure the complaint process has been followed according to the process they gave us when they got approval to run the qualifications. And if they've not followed that properly, if something has gone wrong, I mean, say, for example, they've decided to charge the student to go through a complaint, which would be a big no-no for us, then we, would go back to the centre and say, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So we would monitor it in that way, but we don't actually run the complaint process, if you see what I mean.
So I guess the message that I'm hearing is that the centre should deal initially with any mediation
Usually,
difficulties
yes.
within their own policies and procedures. And really, if a formal complaint's raised, then that might be something that you look at some point. But the scope really is that the centre initially deals with it through their policies.
If they can, yeah, that's right. If they want to complain about an external assessment result, they do have a right to appeal. So there is an appeals process, a CPCAB appeals process that students can go through if they want to appeal an external assessment result. But anything else, any other assessment decisions, those are made by their centre, so they would have to go back through the centre to appeal against an assessment decision that's been given in the centre.
I think that's really, really interesting to know, because I think that sometimes students don't realise that. They don't realise that centres have their own policies, procedures and complaints, avenues of complaint. Hopefully they don't have to use it. And they shouldn't bypass that and come straight to you, because it's not your remit at that point.
And I think it gives the centre then the ability to really kind of work with that.
Yes.
They know this candidate themselves, so they're probably going to be in the best place to work through any kind of difficulties that are going on. And I think it's important to acknowledge that counselling training is very challenging, and it can stir up quite a lot of emotion. And I think it's about acknowledging that sometimes those very difficult dynamics, just as we would as practitioners, as therapists, we would work with what's in the room and try to kind of resolve that process internally. And sometimes that is really, really hard for people, and I get that. I really do understand it.
Well, things get triggered, don't they? And
Absolutely.
then they come out in all sorts of different ways, and maybe not always quite in the right place, but that's can be what happens.
Yes, and certainly at the higher level qualifications, level 4, where people are really looking at themselves, being intrapsychic and feeling how they feel, and the world changes around them. It can be quite troubling.
And I think that's a good point, because the level 4 is our only 2-year qualification,
Yes.
and a lot can happen to people during those 2 years of a course.
Yes.
Life happens to all of us, and so things occur during those 2 years which might have quite an effect on how students cope with demands of a rigorous training and placement and supervision and personal therapy. It can all play a part.
And of course, people see the world differently. They come in and, it's a little bit like the Matrix to some extent.
Yes.
People see the reality of their lives that perhaps they've been denying or not seeing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
And the training is transformative in nature.
Yes.
It kind of... I always used to say to my students, for your level 4, this will be probably the hardest 2 years of your life. And it needs to be.
Yes.
Because at the end of it, you need to be the best practitioner you can be for your
Absolutely.
clients.
Yeah.
So expect to go through the mill. To some degree, enjoy going through the mill as much as you can, and understand that it will be worth it.
Yes. I used to say to my students, it should come with a health warning.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Training, and the idea that counsellors are forged, they're forged in the furnace of personal development and their own personal view of the world. So I think that's a very strong message, that the world will change. Certainly, as you say, through a 2-year course.
Yeah.
Acronyms are always a bit of an interesting one. How many people get confused between the BACP and CPCAB?
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot. It's one of those things with counselling and psychotherapy. and kind of things like association and awarding, you're going to end up with the same letters mixed
C's
up
and
at some
A's
point.
and-
It's lots of C's, lots of P's. So yeah, we get confused quite a lot with BACP, and I think it also probably doesn't help that there's terminology within what we do that also overlap. So
Yeah.
we offer, or we accredit, regulated qualifications, and BACP also has an accreditation process for practitioners and counsellors, and BACP also has an accreditation process for courses at centre level. So the mix-up between students saying, well, is my course BACP accredited or is it CPCAB accredited? What does that mean? Can it be both? Can it be either? And I think for us, we kind of try to make it as clear as possible. CPCAB is an awarding organisation. We offer regulated, accredited qualifications, and BACP is a professional association. They offer membership, they offer a professional register. They also host
regulate the standards.
They
don't they,
regulate
for the profession.
standards, and they offer an ethical framework and kind of ethical standards for practitioners working in the field. Some of our centres will be teaching the BACP ethical framework. Some of our centres will expect their students to sign up as BACP members. Some of our centres will have had their CPCAB qualifications BACP accredited.
Yes.
Which is brilliant because for us, our level 4 qualification is eligible for BACP accreditation. So once they've got a CPCAB stamp, it's also a BACP accredited qualification if that centre meets both requirements.
So just to get this clear in my mind, and I guess clear in the audience's mind.
Go for it.
So CPCAB are an awarding body. You basically work with Ofqual and the different qualification boards in the United Kingdom as a whole to produce a standardised qualification.
Yes.
The BACP are an ethical body, and they are one of many ethical bodies that oversee ethics in counselling. Now, some courses can ask for the BACP to put a quality stamp on their course. So it's possible that someone could be doing a CPCAB course, which is BACP accredited.
That's right.
Which is a separate process, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean, I think students often get very confused or a bit disappointed if they're not on a BACP accredited course because they think that might stop them getting BACP membership at some point or accreditation, whereas it doesn't, because all of our courses can lead into BACP membership if that's what they want at some point.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of confusion comes,
Yeah.
that students look at it, oh, it's not BACP accredited, I don't want to do it then. Well, no, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Actually, comparatively few courses, qualifications are BACP accredited.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter too much whether they are or they're not, because they can still follow that route through to accreditation when they've done all the requirements.
I think that's a really important message, the fact that if you're doing a CPCAB qualification, then it is a valuable and valid qualification.
Yeah.
And our friends at the BACP, they can accredit that, and that makes some of their processes easier.
Yes,
You don't
yeah,
have to do the
exactly, yeah.
certificates of proficiency
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what the accreditation bit does, is it means that the certificate of proficiency, which is now, was it 4 or 5 years old?
Yes.
Maybe a little
Something
longer.
like that.
Which is essentially a kind of interim standard check from BACP for students that didn't go through an accredited qualification with BACP. They do that test and they're able to access the register the same as anybody else would.
Yeah, so in my case, I was a student member. I became a member of the BACP, and then I think in 2014, they asked people to do the CLP test.
Yeah.
I hadn't done an accredited BACP accredited qualification, so I went off to a hotel. I think it's slightly different, the process now, and I sat what was effectively a multiple choice test. Went off. Had a cup of tea and a nice cake because it was in the Midland Hotel, so you've got to have high tea in the Midland Hotel in Manchester. And then a few weeks later, I got a letter from the BACP saying to me, "Congratulations, you've passed, and you now can go on to the register.
Yeah.
You know, the voluntary register, and that's the process that's missed out if someone does an accredited course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it just provides direct access. And I think for us, what we what we like students to understand is that doing a qualification with us provides them with access to a number of the professional registers.
Yeah.
So I know that NCS is growing in membership,
Yes.
and our qualifications meet their requirements. The Association for Christian Counsellors as well, BACP, and many of the registers on the Professional Standards Authority fit really neatly
And
with CPCAB
UKBC,
qualifications.
if they've done the higher levels with us,
Yes.
there's a route through to membership with them.
And crucially, employers recognised CPCAB qualifications.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we get feedback on is that our qualifications are very well recognised for what they are and the standard that they provide students. I think particularly in terms of kind of what we ask of centres to be a CPCAB centre, and what our kind of quality checks and our standards here in terms of things like the external verification, the exam, it makes sure that students, if they go through our courses, know what they're doing. And for us, that's something we constantly check out, because we, essentially that's our goal. We want to make sure that if a student studies our qualification, they are able to do the job at the end of it. And ideally get a paid role from it.
Yes.
I know that the field is very, very difficult at the moment, and that funding across the kind of whole scope of helping professions is really limited. But for us, we aim to provide a qualification that really equips somebody to work as a counsellor.
Yes. Very, very important, because people spend a lot of money,
Yeah.
invest a lot of time, go through a lot of personal
Yeah.
growth,
Yeah.
and you want a qualification at the end of that is valuable and recognised by employers. One final question. There seems to be a myriad of qualifications. Wouldn't it just be simpler just to have one qualification? just people just go on one qualification and then get off on their lives.
Would it
probably would be
simpler?
simpler.
Yeah. And I think this is something that often goes through discussions in education, goes through discussions in the kind of professional arenas, counselling, psychotherapy, is there's a lot of different routes to becoming a counsellor. Is that a good thing, or is it not a good thing? And I think and I guess it is kind of a mixture of both, because I'm a member of Counselling Tutor on the Facebook group.
You
so
are.
I
You
am.
are.
I'm not snooping on CPCAB. I've been a member since I was a tutor.
Yes.
And the questions I see asked over and over again, to me, show that a lot of students, particularly when they're first coming to it, the plethora of qualifications is very confusing. And it's very hard for somebody new to this world to understand, well, will this 10-hour online qualification that says it's a counselling qualification, will that be the same as this detailed classroom-based qualification at my local college that costs so much more? And some of them have got acronyms on. What do the acronyms mean? Why is that important to me? And it's very hard for them to understand. And I think we can only do our best to explain, from our point of view, as simply as we can, why we feel a vocational route is really valid. Why we believe our qualifications, which we insist are delivered in a classroom with full guided learning hours, are a really robust way of being trained as a counsellor.
So they're experiential, aren't they? That's what we believe in, that learning to be a counsellor isn't about necessarily just writing a good essay. You have to actually be able to do the work. And so our criteria are set up across all levels in such a way that students have to demonstrate that they can do whatever it is. And that's a big part of what we believe in. So, and that's partly because we believe that, and partly because people come into counselling training perhaps not having had a particularly good background in education.
Yes.
And they can come in at the lower levels and work their way up without having particularly good GCSEs or A-levels and don't have to have a degree. They might not like doing lots of writing. That's not to say they don't do any writing, but it's a different way of working and learning, and that appeals to some people. It doesn't appeal to other people.
Yes.
They'd much prefer to have an academic course. And our courses are not academic in that sense,
Yes.
but they still learn a lot. They get a lot of knowledge, but they also get the doing.
Yes, it's the craft based, aren't
Yeah.
they? So when we use the term vocational, I'm thinking of that as actually demonstrating a competence.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
essentially a qualification that fits within a vocation, a place of work that allows somebody to develop those skills in a practical way, whilst also kind of embedding it in a knowledge-based understanding of why they're doing what they're doing. And I think that route and the flexibility of delivery that centres can create around a CPCAB course, I think that needs to be out there.
Yeah.
I think that there are some extremely good higher education degree, master's qualifications in counselling and psychotherapy. There's some real quality delivery going on at that level. But so many students either are not, they don't have the time to set aside to do a degree, or the finances, or they've not got the precursor qualifications that would lead to it. So for us, we provide another option. We provide something that people can do a job during the day and then study as an evening
Yes.
course, or they can do it on a weekend. They can maintain a job, they can keep a family going, and they can still train as a practitioner. For us, that variety provides an accessible route for people that might not have been able to train as a counsellor if it weren't for it.
And it provides a diversity as well, doesn't it? Because it means that people, and I think of myself as a second chancer, didn't particularly like school that much, can come back into training, feel supported, and achieve their learning goals and qualify.
Yeah, and I think from thinking back over the years to some of the students that I've worked with, a lot of them have said, actually, if I had to go to university, that would be too daunting for me. I wouldn't be able to do it, or I've never seen myself as an academic, so I would never have put myself in that position. But actually what I've realised is I can be a great counsellor. And some of my best students were people that probably wouldn't have been counsellors if it weren't for this.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly my experience. So, Kelly, Heather, thank you so much for taking this time out for our audience to answer these questions. I know that they're going to be so pleased to hear this. And if you're watching this, I hope, and you've asked a question and one of your questions has been answered, I really hope that it's been useful for you. And as always, thank you for watching, and stay grounded and stay safe. Thank you.